Time, as we all know, never stands still, and with it, people change too. Sometimes these changes are so significant that real challenges arise in communication between generations. This is especially true for the older generation, who may find themselves facing the unfamiliar worlds of their grandchildren. Grandparents, accustomed to their own way of life and traditions, often find themselves in situations where their grandchildren's interests bear little resemblance to what was relevant in their own youth. For the older generation, the world of today's teenagers can seem utterly foreign. Modern teens and children spend more and more time in front of screens, immersed in the realms of video games, social media, and memes. Their passions and hobbies are often wrapped in digital layers that older folks struggle to navigate. Grandparents trying to strike up a conversation frequently encounter misunderstanding, as new terms, abbreviations, online slang, and cutting-edge technology remain a mystery to them. At first glance, it might seem like an unbridgeable gap separates them from their grandchildren. Yet, it's crucial to recognize that a common language can always be found between generations. Despite technological differences and varying worldviews, friendship and understanding are possible. Like any relationship, it requires effort from both sides. It's not just about making an effort to understand someone new, it's about trying to share in their interests. When the older generation shows genuine care and curiosity about the lives of the younger ones, a real opportunity emerges to build relationships and bridge the divide between their worlds. We shouldn't forget that every generation has its own quirks, passions, and ways of communicating. For older folks, it can be hard to grasp that video games or YouTube videos might hold the same importance for teens today as more traditional pastimes did for them in their youth. However, as many have discovered, making an effort to understand these interests not only opens new horizons, but also deepens connections with the younger generation. On the flip side, it's worth remembering that kids and teens also crave the support and attention of their elders. In today's world filled with information overload and instability, they often lack not just advice but also a sincere emotional bond with those older than them. For them, interacting with grandparents can be a source of familial warmth and a sense of being understood. But for this connection to become meaningful, the younger generation needs to feel that their world matters, that their hobbies and passions are worthy of attention and respect. In a world that increasingly values speed, virtual interactions, and rapid information exchange, genuine intergenerational connection might seem outdated or hard to achieve. But if we realize that sincerity and a willingness to understand each other are the cornerstones of any communication, then building relationships, including friendships across generations, becomes possible. It's important not to shy away from new forms of interaction, but to embrace them, opening up to new horizons and interests. And perhaps by learning to respect and understand their grandchildren's world, the older generation might find themselves at the heart of this new, digital landscape that initially seemed so alien and confusing. Friendship between generations isn't just about swapping ideas or giving quick advice. It's about recognizing that every age and every generation is unique and valuable in its own way. This process requires a willingness to learn, an openness to new experiences, and above all, a genuine interest in another person's world. By building relationships with their grandchildren, the older generation not only preserves family values, but also discovers new ways to connect with the ever-changing world around them. When Thomas retired, he thought he'd start enjoying quiet days filled with rest and peace. But he soon realized he missed human connection. His grandson, 12-year-old Alex, spent all his free time glued to his tablet screen. Thomas tried talking to him, but the conversations never flowed. Alex seemed lost in virtual worlds, and Thomas couldn't figure out what mattered to him. His grandson spoke a language full of memes, slang, and terms Thomas had never heard. It felt like an invisible wall had sprung up between them. Back in his youth, Thomas had a warm relationship with his own grandfather. He respected him and hung on his every word. But now, with Alex, Thomas felt like an outsider in this new world. He wondered why this was happening. Was it because he wasn't trying hard enough to understand his grandson? Wouldn't it be easier to wait for Alex to show interest, rather than attempt to step into his world? But Thomas decided a different approach was needed. He realized friendship can't be one-sided. To grow closer, he had to show interest and open up himself. The older generation often expects the younger ones to seek them out, but Thomas understood he needed to take the first step. He decided to try, not as a mentor, but as a genuine part of Alex's life. Thomas didn't know where to begin. Alex was obsessed with video games, and Thomas had no clue what was going on in them. He didn't understand how modern games worked, what memes were, or how to stream on Twitch. Still, he refused to give up. He started researching online, watching videos, and reading articles about popular games to get a foothold in this world. A few days later, he approached Alex and said, "You know, I've been reading up on games a bit. Could you tell me what they're all about?" Alex was surprised but agreed. Suddenly, they were speaking the same language. Alex showed him his favorite games, explained their mechanics, and even taught his grandpa the basics. Thomas listened with interest, asked questions, and avoided criticism. It was a big step. He didn't try to impose his old-fashioned views. He simply showed curiosity and respect for Alex's passions. With each conversation, Alex opened up more. He began to see that his grandpa wasn't just trying to get his world, but genuinely wanted to understand it. This gave Thomas a fresh perspective. If you want to bond with someone, you first need to understand their world and value it. The process of growing closer wasn't as fast as Thomas had hoped. Sometimes, talks with Alex would circle back to memes and jokes that Thomas couldn't grasp, but instead of giving up, he chose not to judge and to learn instead. He realized that respecting Alex meant not just understanding his hobbies, but also accepting his way of communicating and thinking. One day, after discussing a new game, Thomas reflected he too had once been a teen, eager to explore a new world and desperate to be understood. He saw that every age has its own uniqueness and deserves its own space. This realization helped him stop resisting and start seeing Alex's world as something valuable and worthy of respect. Psychologists say that building mutual understanding between generations requires not just tolerance, but a willingness to learn and adapt. It's not just adjusting, it's a true shift in perspective. Thomas began to see how vital it was to give Alex room to express himself. He started interfering less in conversations, listening more, and asking questions instead of offering advice. Over time, this paid off. Alex began sharing more about his interests and passions. One day, he even suggested they work on a project together. They decided to make a short video about Thomas's favorite games. Alex was thrilled, and Thomas happily agreed. It wasn't just a video project, it was real collaboration. They picked out clips, wrote a script, and laughed when things went wrong. Through this, Thomas discovered a new way to connect with his grandson, through shared creativity. This experience became the foundation of their relationship. Thomas realized that a key part of friendship is doing things together. When people collaborate, it strengthens their bond and helps them understand each other better. For the older generation, it's a reminder. Don't cling to your own worldview. Be ready to try new things, even if they feel tricky or unfamiliar. Despite these successes, Thomas still had questions. He often wondered why teens were so drawn to virtual worlds. What was it about games and social media that hooked them? These thoughts nagged at him, though he didn't rush to voice them. Alex was too busy to dive into philosophical debates. Still, he noticed how much his grandpa cared about his life and started opening up more. One evening at dinner, Alex said, "You know, Grandpa, sometimes games are just a way to unwind, but they're also like hanging out with friends. I play with the guys, we talk, laugh, and plan stuff." Those words hit Thomas hard. Suddenly, he understood that for Alex, video games weren't just fun. They were a way to belong, to avoid loneliness. This was a revelation. He realized that games and online communities offered kids a chance to connect, not isolate themselves as he'd once thought. That conversation was a turning point for Thomas, showing him that the virtual world wasn't an enemy, but a part of life where his grandson found his place. Thomas kept looking for ways to get closer to Alex. One day, he suggested, "What if we made a family album together to capture our story?" Alex was skeptical. He didn't see the point of paper photos when everything could stay on his phone, but Thomas convinced him it could be fun and useful. They picked out old pictures, worked on the project, added captions, and styled the pages. It turned out to be surprisingly enjoyable for both. Alex learned how to work with physical materials and grew curious about family history, asking questions and flipping through old photos. Thomas shared stories tied to each picture. It became a key moment in their relationship. Alex started to see that the past mattered, and his grandpa wasn't just some boring old guy, but someone with a rich life story. Thomas, meanwhile, found joy in creating something together that linked their generations. As time passed, Thomas noticed how much their relationship was evolving. When they met, their talks grew longer, more engaging, and more open. Instead of just swapping facts about their interests, they began discussing feelings and experiences. Alex started sharing his school struggles, the challenges of being a teen, and his search for a place in life. Thomas listened and offered support. Sometimes they disagreed on life's big questions, and that was okay. Psychologists note that debates and differences aren't a reason to drift apart. They're a chance to understand each other better. Thomas and Alex learned to find common ground and accept their differences. Each time they worked through a disagreement, they grew closer. Thomas learned something vital. Differences aren't to be feared. They can be useful if handled right. Even clashes can strengthen ties if both sides want to listen. For Alex's next birthday, Thomas decided to give him a gift that symbolized their friendship. He picked out a t-shirt that read, "Level 70 Grandpa." Alex laughed when he saw it, but you could tell he was touched. The gift wasn't just funny, it showed that the wall between them was gone. Alex no longer saw his grandpa as outdated, but as a friend who tried to be part of his world. It was a moment when they could say, "We're on the same wavelength." Thomas realized that age didn't matter. What mattered was sincerity and a willingness to show interest and respect. Alex, too, saw that his grandpa wasn't just an old guy clueless about the modern world, but someone ready to adapt and stay connected despite their differences. Over time, Thomas and Alex's bond grew even stronger. Alex got curious about an old movie his grandpa loved. He noticed how much depth and beauty it held, even if it felt old school. Thomas saw that older culture could appeal to kids if presented in a fresh way. Alex started asking his grandpa for advice more often, about life, tech, everything. These moments became more frequent, and they both felt the generational divide fading. When an old man and his grandson genuinely respect each other's interests and views, it makes their relationship richer and stronger. Thomas realized that bonding with grandkids isn't just about teaching. It's about opening up and keeping learning. It's a process that takes patience and understanding. In the end, Thomas understood that befriending grandkids isn't some daunting task. It's about showing interest, respect, and a readiness to understand. He saw that getting close to someone means being willing to share your own experiences while embracing new ones. Alex became more than a grandson. He became a true friend, someone Thomas could talk to about anything. Friendship across generations isn't impossible. It's a chance to build bridges that strengthen ties and deepen mutual understanding. Thomas was glad he took that first step, despite his doubts and struggles. After all, real friendship knows no age. It's built on mutual respect and a desire to understand another's world. From this story about Thomas and his grandson, we can conclude that friendship between generations, especially between grandparents and their grandkids, is entirely possible, despite what might seem like insurmountable differences in interests, lifestyles, and perspectives. The key lies in a sincere mutual desire to understand each other, a willingness to learn, and respect for each generation's uniqueness. Today's teens live in a digital world that can feel alien to their elders. But bridging that gap is achievable through active involvement in their lives, exploring their hobbies, creating together, and staying open to new experiences. It's not about waiting for the young ones to reach out, but taking the initiative with curiosity and patience. In return, when kids feel supported and valued, they begin to appreciate their elders' wisdom and warmth, strengthening their emotional bond. This two-way process demands effort, but brings mutual enrichment. Thomas and Alex's journey proves that sincerity, adaptability, and shared activities can erase age barriers, turning grandparents into true friends for their grandkids.